Belize and to what we refer to like Isla Bonita, San Pedro and Burgess Key. I hope that you have been well taken care of. If you've been well taken care of, that's all my work. If anything went wrong, well, then it's Minister Courtney's fault. So we can start with that, right? We start off now. Secretary General, can you?
Do I go to the podium?
Yes, you can.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable John A. Briceño, Prime Minister of Belize and the Chairman of the Conference of the Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, and outgoing Chairman of the Conference, who should be online this morning, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government of the Caribbean Community, other heads of delegations, heads of regional and international institutions, representatives of civil society, delegates, it is my pleasure to welcome you all and to address this opening session of the 33rd Inter-Sessional meeting of the heads of government of the Caribbean Community. I am particularly pleased that this, my first address to this forum as Secretary General, is taking place in my home country. I thank the government and people of Belize for the hard work that has ensured that this meeting takes place despite the ongoing effects of the COVID pandemic. We must all be reminded of the necessity to follow protocols to ensure that our stay in San Pedro is a safe one as we conduct the business of the community in this beautiful setting. Let me welcome to the chairmanship of the Conference of Heads of Government for the first time our host, the Prime Minister of Belize, Honorable John Briceño. I have no doubt that his experience and skills will be of great benefit as he leads our community in this uncertain time. I must thank the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Gaston Brown, for his stewardship as chair of the community during a very testing time in the last 6 months of 2021. Thank you, Prime Minister. A warm welcome is also extended to the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, the Honorable Philip Davis, who is coming to his first meeting as the member of the Conference of Heads of Government. Prime Minister, we look forward to the new perspectives and insights that you will no doubt bring to the discussions. Chair, Heads of Government, distinguished delegates, we gather together around the table rather than virtually for the first time in almost 2 years. The circumstances that occasioned that hiatus are still with us. We are learning to live with it and to conduct our affairs in what can only be described as the new normal. This we have to abide by in coming to grips with repairing the health, social, and economic devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic. Once again, a disaster not of our own making has befallen us. Significant obstacles still lay in our path. Much too many of our citizens remain unvaccinated. Too many of our children are still out of school. Too many of our businesses are still floundering with the resultant effect on unemployment. However, one thing we have learned over the 49 years of our existence is that we are a resilient community, bound together particularly in times of adversity. Such is this time. Just as the skills of the Caribbean Public Health Agency have guided us through the pandemic, the operations of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency have been crucial in times of natural disaster, and the structures of the CARICOM Implementation Agency for Crime and Security and the RSS have helped to keep us safe from external security threats. We have in place the tools that we can use to build back better from the social and economic damages of the pandemic. We must now move forward with the trust and confidence we have in those institutions into those measures that make the CARICOM single market and economy work for all of us. Let us set a target to lift intra-regional trade out of the doldrums of 16 to 18% of our total trade into 25% by 2025. This can be fueled in large measure by the agricultural sector. The proposals put forward to this meeting by the Special Ministerial Task Force on Agriculture are worthy of favorable consideration. That work complements the thrust led by the CARICOM private sector organization, the 25 by 2025 initiative, aimed at reducing extra-regional agri-food imports by 25% by 2025, in response to a mandate given by the heads of government. As the recovery takes hold among the developed countries, the time is right for our region to act upon the proposals for joint marketing of our tourism product. The Caribbean still remains a preferred destination, and within our member states, there is a variety of attractions from the traditional to the niche markets to satisfy a broad spectrum of visitors. The pandemic has forced us to bring forward the future with respect to the widespread use of information and communication technologies. We can no longer delay implementation of the regional digital development strategy, including the roadmap towards a single ICT space. E-government and e-commerce are here for now and will continue. The application of technology is what will underpin all our development efforts. There is no doubt that to drive the development, we must have the support of our international partners, both countries and institutions. We have to continue the strong advocacy for the use of the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index as the main criteria for accessing concessional financing. We must continue the advocacy for the simplification of procedures to access funds ostensibly designed to assist developing countries. Institutional support for advancing these initiatives in all areas is critical. The CARICOM Secretariat has commenced its restructuring and retooling to allow greater focus and efficiency. Directorates have been re-engineered and greater emphasis has been put on teamwork and cross-sector collaboration. There is greater use of IT platforms for our work and in communicating with our stakeholders. A cultural change with accountability being paramount will contribute to more effective service delivery to the governments and people of our community. Chair, heads of government, distinguished delegates, as we look towards a major milestone in 2023 of 50 years of CARICOM, we can celebrate our achievements across the 4 pillars of our integration movement. What we must also do is look forward to those achievements as the foundation for building a resilient Caribbean community based on rule of law, participatory governance, social and economic and environmental resilience. In short, a place in which our people live in a safe, viable, and prosperous society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, SG, for your words and of welcome and your opening remarks. Now we go to the outgoing chairman of the Conference of Heads of Government, Honorable Gaston Brown, who is online, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. Prime Minister, please proceed.
Distinguished Prime Minister John Prezino of Belize, acknowledge my other colleague heads, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, Dr. Carla Barnett, ministers and senior officials of member states and of the Secretariat, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to this opening ceremony, which is a familiar one in governance of the Conference of Heads of the Government of the CARICOM Community, CARICOM. After 6 months as chairman in office of CARICOM, I hand the gavel of leadership to my colleague and friend, the Prime Minister of Belize, John Bricino. In doing so, I offer him my full support, as I'm sure all my colleagues do. I do not offer my support lightly or as a protocol gesture, because our unity and solidarity in CARICOM will be a vital and necessary element in the strength and stability of our organization as we face a world in flux. All around us, very dangerous and volatile changes threaten to overwhelm the international order as we have come to know it. As I speak, the guns of war are once again roaring in Europe in a military confrontation that could bring two nuclear-armed world powers into open conflict. The implications of this development for world peace and security are almost too frightening to contemplate. The trend towards danger and volatility across many spheres in international affairs has characterized the past 6 months of my chairmanship, and I fully expect it to continue. Approximately 8 months ago, hardly had I assumed my responsibilities as chairman of CARICOM, then we had the tragic news of the assassination of one of our colleagues, the president of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse. This was an event almost unheard of in our region, but a tragic reminder that our region is not immune from the forces of instability and criminality swirling around the world. Barely had Haiti come to terms with the tragic loss of her president, then she was struck by an earthquake, followed shortly by the passage of Tropical Storm Grace. In other parts of our community, many of our member states struggled with the demands of the COVID-19 pandemic that called for the vaccination of a significant portion of our populations in order to achieve herd immunity. Obtaining adequate supplies of vaccines on the international market became an issue. And even with the help of CARICOM, PAHO, and the establishment of the COVAX facility, several of our member states faced vaccine shortages. Vaccine hesitancy also emerged as a significant regional challenge. We remain grateful to those countries of the international community which stepped forward to fill the gap, and these include the United States and India. With resolute and joint action, I firmly believe that the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic is now behind us, and our community is emerging from the devastating effects of COVID on lives and livelihoods. Climate change remains the most significant existential threat facing all of humanity. The hopes of people in so many countries around the world for meaningful action in the climate emergency were dashed against the rocks of the obstinate and selfish attitudes of developed countries and large corporations assembled at the COP26 in Glasgow last November. As chairman of the Alliance of Small Island States, Alliance of Small Island States, I had the distinction of leading the advocacy on behalf of small states as we strive to make the world aware of the existential threat posed to our region by the world's climate emergency. It is not a secret that the results of COP26 fell far short of expectations, and we continue our advocacy to push the major polluters of the world to reduce emissions, to take mitigating actions, and to contain rising temperatures to within 1.5 degrees of pre-industrial levels. Greater attention will also be focused on climate emergency accountability as we aggressively examine the legal recourses available to us under the appropriate international tribunal for loss and damage to end the injustices suffered as a result of the reckless actions of major polluters. I believe that CARICOM has learned from these developments to rely more and more on our own initiatives and our own resources, to produce, buy, and consume local and regional products as a priority for increased product security, profitability, and sustainability. We have taken decisions as a community to give priority to agriculture and tourism in our COVID-19 recovery strategy, given the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on these sectors. It is a truism that no community of nations could be considered great if it cannot feed itself. Food and nutrition security is an achievable goal, and I look forward to the recommendations and the urgent implementation of the plan from the Ministerial Task Force, which is chaired by the distinguished President of Guyana. The nutrition element is vital as we battle against non-communicable diseases, which are rampant in our region and continue to deplete our human resources as a result of the effects of debilitating illnesses and premature deaths. As we produce and consume more regional products, we must commit to joint action to develop reliable logistics and sustainable transportation to move goods and people within the region. This necessitates increased commitment and joint action among member states to facilitate a fully functional integration movement. Colleagues, the first CARICOM Africa Summit was held on September 7th of 2021. And I want to commend my brother, President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, for the special efforts he made to make this summit a reality. The summit acknowledged that the continent of Africa comprises 5 regions, but that the African diaspora has been identified as the 6th region of Africa. We welcome this designation and will do all in our power to develop and strengthen meaningful and beneficial relations between Africa and the countries of the Caribbean community. The first step in this direction has already been taken with our decision to establish a diplomatic mission in Nairobi, Kenya. This mission will serve as a platform responsible for diplomatic outreach to other countries on the African continent with which we hope to have deeper relations. The summit also identified several areas for common action, including tackling the world climate emergency and joint advocacy for the adoption of a multidimensional vulnerability index, which will allow for the inclusion of more than just the narrow income-based criteria currently in use to assess the eligibility of, or to assess the eligibility of countries for concessionary financing. This is not an issue we can allow to lapse, as so much of our development prospects rest on persuading, especially the international financial institutions, that we are not being treated fairly. I believe that the solidarity of our sister countries on the African continent can in fact be a game changer on this issue and rescue us from what has until now been a dialogue of the deaf. Colleagues, when I began, I offered Prime Minister of Belize my full support as he discharges his responsibilities as chairman. And in fact, I want to reiterate my pledge because I know that as a community, we have some urgent tasks ahead of us. Haiti is certainly among the priorities. We need to work with Haiti in helping to resolve the deteriorating political situation in the country and the deepening public anxiety over citizen security. Our community has been engaged with Haiti at the highest political level and has offered to assist in crafting a Haitian-led solution to the present crisis that will garner the support of all the political forces in Haiti, as well as the international community. Citizen security and political legitimacy are what Haiti needs. And without these vital elements, Haiti's economic and social prospects will remain grim. I'm hoping that our community can be the bridge to the United Nations and other major organizations of the international community to bring these needed elements to Haiti, as well as a strong measure of humanitarian assistance rigorously applied. Colleagues, there are several items that did not make it onto this conference agenda as we seek to make the agenda more manageable and to prioritize and to projectize the various programs of activity for effective implementation. We must, however, continue to be vigilant in managing the threats of de-risking, the threats associated with the proposed global minimum corporation tax, and sanction listing of so-called uncooperative jurisdictions by the OECD and the European Union. We must also enhance our negotiations of the EPA to ensure that it delivers the promised benefits to all of its members, including the LDCs within CARICOM. The provision of affordable broadband is a public good, as vital as the provision of water or electricity, and this should remain a regional priority. Diversification and rapid economic expansion through digitalization require widespread enhancement of our information and communication technology infrastructure. Therefore, the cost of telecommunications and access to cheaper and more efficient broadband is quintessential for robust economic growth and development. These and other realities should encourage us to move more urgently with the implementation of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, the CSME. We can no longer afford the luxury of delaying approval of key instruments such as the Financial Services Agreement, investment policy, incentive regimes, and the development and regulation of a regional securities market. The full operationalization of the CSME is required for the transformation of our economies and to fight for a robust post-COVID recovery. CARICOM needs to be able to shift gears and close its project implementation gaps to ensure the full operationalization of the CSME. One final note, a new Secretary General took office during my term, and I want to commend SG, Dr. Carla Barnett, for what I'm seeing so far in the ongoing operations of the Secretariat. I want to give every encouragement to the process of streamlining and rejuvenation that is on the way. I understand that the change is already afoot, which would, for example, bring into being a more fit-for-purpose reorganization of the external trade and single market elements of the region's work. I commend the Secretary General and the CARICOM Secretariat as they seek to turn the mandates of the heads of government into meaningful and practical action and to address the many challenges that loom before us. In closing, I wish us all a successful meeting, hoping as always that CARICOM moves from strength to strength in the noble task of regional development and integration in which it is engaged. I'm obliged. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Brown, and I certainly look forward to consulting with you from time to time. You did a wonderful job in your last 6 months, and we must commend you on a job well done. Distinguished heads of government, Secretary General of CARICOM, ministers, heads of regional institutions, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, I see ministers of government, members of the House of Representatives, and CEOs. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Belize. I am especially happy to welcome you all to San Pedro and Burgess Key, better known as La Isla Bonita. San Pedro is a destination which attracts many foreign and local tourists. It epitomizes beauty and leisure, which unfortunately many of us will not get to fully enjoy this week. But San Pedro is truly a microcosm of the challenges we all are facing as small island and low-lying coastal developing states. Beaches here are eroding because of rising sea levels. The Belize Barrier Reef, a World Heritage Site, is struggling due to coral bleaching. A growing population is testing the limits of the island's capacity. More recently, the COVID-19 pandemic dealt a devastating blow to San Pedro's lucrative tourism industry. But the resilient people of San Pedro did not succumb. They did not give up. When tourism ebbed, they pivot to fishing. Pioneering coral transplantation is restoring the reef, and a Herculean beach reclamation project is underway. Yes, we are adapting and mitigating. We are spending millions to meet these crises because we must, even though we did little to cost them. Unfair, yes. The harsh reality of the 21st century, Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, this 33rd Inter-Sessional meeting is a particular consequential meeting. We meet at a time when unprecedented and existential challenges coincide with our citizens' expectations for relief and prosperity. The international climate is riddled with crises, conflicts, and suffering. Every country, every region is managing, they say, unprecedented challenges with, they say, inadequate sources. The global unraveling is occurring against the backdrop of what appears to be a new Cold War. As we meet, Russia has invaded Ukraine. This is a flagrant violation of international law. We condemn it in the strongest terms, this unjustified invasion. There must be an immediate cessation of hostilities and immediate and unilateral withdrawal of all Russian troops from Ukraine. We call for all to respect their obligations under international humanitarian law. The uncertainties that exist are proof positive that multilateral cooperation and support are indispensable to effectively countering the immense challenges we face. At the same time, at national and regional levels, we bear the responsibility of meeting the aspirations of our people for development, for improved standards of living, and for opportunities. This is our primary duty, our enduring mission. Across CARICOM, we are contending with the worst economic recession in modern history. In 2020, our country saw double-digit economic contraction. Thousands of our citizens were suddenly unemployed. Remittances dried up. In Belize, we estimate that the poverty rate has increased from 50% in 2018 to 60% by 2021. Two-thirds of all Belizeans are poor. This is clearly unacceptable. No doubt, similar circumstances obtained across the region. The robust economic recovery that appeared to be at hand in the first part of 2021 is now slowing. In August 2021, ECLAC projected that the Caribbean would grow by 4.1% in 2021. By January 2022, ECLAC revised its projection to 3% and a measly 1.2% excluding Guyana. For 2022, ECLAC has already revised downward its projections for the Caribbean from 7.8% to 6.1%. In addition to these circumstances, many of us are carrying unsustainable debt loads and have limited fiscal space to mount the necessary economic response. Unfortunately, only 4 CARICOM member states are participating in the IMF's debt service suspension initiative. And in 2020, only 5 member states, including Haiti, received concessional financing from the World Bank. This is wrong. It is also unjust. While it is imperative that we continue to press our case, which is fair and just, we know from experience that the wheels of international cooperation grind slowly. We cannot afford to lose further ground. We cannot afford to lose our future. Therefore, we must be more strategic and coordinated in our advocacy. We must demand an immediate reform of the international financial system, demand urgent climate action, and immediate access to vaccines. The foundational Georgetown Accord of 1973 eloquently articulated the ambition of heads to unify the region around the common purpose of regional development. The Accord conveys a breathless urgency and need for unrelenting speed to achieve regional integration. Heads expressed a shared, and I quote, common determination to fulfill within the shortest possible time the hopes and aspirations of the Caribbean territories for industrial and agricultural development, full employment, and improved living standards, end of quote. In 1973, at the height of the Cold War and the waning days of colonialism, heads had the vision and foresight to embark on the path of regional integration, aspiring to achieve development for our region. They looked inward for the solution to satisfy the development aspirations of Caribbean people and for the strength to engage externally. I turn to 1973 not out of romantic nostalgia, but to remind us of our roots, and more importantly, to suggest that we need to rekindle that founding vision, both as to the scale of its ambition of our integration and the speed with which we need to achieve its consolidation. Integration is the instrument by which we have committed to advance our development, and quite frankly, for our small states, integration is really the only modality we have. I am well aware of the criticism in many quarters, and perhaps well-founded, about the state of our integration. For many, we are not moving fast enough or going deep enough. Others feel their fledgling national identities at risk. But none have challenged the inevitability of integration for our small Caribbean states. Integration is not only a sine qua non for our development, it is also imperative for our recovery. The spirit of solidarity and cooperation and the steely commitment to integration which animates the seminal undertakings of the Grand Aunts and the Rose Hall declarations must inspire us now to lay out a new framework of action for the next decade. Next year will mark the 50th anniversary of the founding of CARICOM, of the conclusion of the Georgetown Accord. This is an auspicious milestone. I propose, colleagues, that during 2022, we embark on a journey of regional consultation so that we can mark the anniversary of the Accord with the adaptation of a repurposed, reimagined, revitalized Accord that presents an irreversible prescription designed to achieve our region's just objectives. The future holds few guarantees, but our common destiny compels us to walk boldly into the future together, secure in the belief that promise of a greater tomorrow is ours. Our recovery should not be aligned to a new regional agenda that is centered around creating prosperity for our people. We must continue more intensely to harness the resource endowments whilst building sustainability and resilience across our development interventions. That would naturally include digital transformation, transformation of agri-food systems, and empowering the CSME to deliver on its objectives. Already, the elements of a new regional agenda are taking shape. The COVID-19 pandemic has underscored the urgency of advancing our single ICT space. All our countries have begun integrating digital technologies into our economic, social, and governance structures. We need an expansion and acceleration of this effort together with investments to increase connectivity, ICT education, and to guard against cybercrimes. And yes, we will achieve regional roaming freedom. I must commend His Excellency Ofran Ali, the President of Guyana, for his leadership and personal commitment to transforming the regional agri-food system. The Special Ministerial Task Force on Food Production and Food Security has already made substantial progress to identify priorities, commodities, levels of investment required, and policy reforms needed against a timeline. Colleagues, Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, the CSME is at the center of our integration. Reflecting on our undertakings in the St. Anne Declaration of 2018, we need to redouble our efforts to complete the removal of the remaining barriers to interregional trade, empower our private sector, and give full effect to the regime for free movement, including by addressing administrative obstacles. The CSME is the answer to the questions of how do we reduce the region's food import bill, of how do we generate economic growth, how we improve and benefit more from trade with extra-regional partners. A robust CSME is indispensable to building resilient economies. It is central to economic recovery. Integration binds together our community, and this community is at its core family. The situation of Haiti is of despair for all of us. We have devoted significant time over the past year in considering how the community can best support Haiti in grappling with a multitude of crises on top of which is now a constitutional crisis. We do not have any easy or quick fixes, but what we know for sure is that the community will continue to walk alongside Haiti. We will continue to offer support, solidarity, and cooperation, and we will continue to advocate for an international response that is commensurate with the needs of Haiti. As we seek to fortify our region, we do so in the context of profound global crises. We are entering the third year of a global pandemic that has permanently changed the way we live and work. Whether our region transitions to the epidemic phase of COVID-19 will depend on accessibility to vaccines, COVID-19 specific treatments, and other therapeutics. Unfortunately, vaccine access and hesitancy remain challenges for several of our member states. We will discuss during our meeting how to overcome these setbacks. It is time to live with COVID. Global action to reverse the trajectory of the climate catastrophe has fallen dangerously short. The world is perilously hurtling towards reaching the global temperature threshold of 1.5 degrees centigrade. Accessibility and scale of climate finance is not commensurate with urgent needs for adaptation and mitigation. We are countries on the front line of this climate emergency. Our existence is at risk. We must send a clearer message on our expectations and demands for global climate action, including the strengthening of 2030 emissions reduction targets to safeguard the 1.5 degree temperature goal, scaling up of the climate finance beyond the US $100 billion through 2025, and of the need of SIDS for finance for loss and damage. Let me wind up by acknowledging that this is the first meeting of the conference at which the new Secretary General, Carla Barnett, a Belizean, I must add, is joining us. Welcome, Madam Secretary General. I want to commend the reform and restructuring of the Secretariat that ESG has already undertaken to better align directorates, workflow, and synergies. We look forward to seeing the review of community institutions in due course. In the same vein, I sincerely believe that the conference also needs to reform our working methodology to make better use of our meetings so that we are focused on the critical and strategic decisions that need to be made on the future direction of the community. I want to also thank the Secretariat for all their support in the preparation and conduct of this meeting. And I must thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Belize, CEO Amalia Mai and her staff for putting all this together in such a short time. Let me also welcome those colleagues who are joining the conference for the first time, Prime Minister Davis of the Bahamas and Prime Minister Pierre of St. Lucia. Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, we meet today at this place called San Pedro and Burgess Key, Belize. It was first settled by the majestic Mayas and became an important trading place for the Mayas. The Maya civilization was advanced, it flourished, and then mysteriously waned. Life forever is guaranteed to no one. The Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings in Rwanda and the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles, California are both scheduled for June this year. COP27 is expected to be held in November in Egypt. These are signposts on the road we will travel. There are forks in the road. We will face radically divergent paths on each occasion. Like the Mayas, let us remember that choices have consequences. Nevertheless, as I look to the future of our region, I am hopeful, I am optimistic, I am confident. Like the good people of San Pedro, we will have to dive deeply into a reservoir of resilience, ingenuity, and creativity to elaborate our own path for development and prosperity with trust and faith in each other. I thank you. Okay, finishing these formalities now, we will take a family photo. Amalia, would you like to give directions as to how this will happen?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Chair. Good morning to everyone, Prime Ministers, heads of delegations, foreign ministers, and colleagues. What we will do now is just take a slight break to take the family photo, and we're going to invite all heads of delegations and foreign ministers to join us outside. The beautiful picture will be taken by the beach, and we have that ready, and we have transportation ready as well. It's a short distance, but we think we should take you there in a little bus. So just step outside, and then we'll come back for the working sessions. Thank you.